Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching a brand new edition of India's World with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. India on Thursday termed Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan's remarks that 30 to 40,000 armed people who fought in Afghanistan or Kashmir were still in his country as a glaring admission and asserted that it is time for Islamabad to take credible and irreversible action against terrorists. Khan, during his 3-day US visit, admitted that about 30 to 40,000 armed people who have been trained and fought in some part of Afghanistan or Kashmir were in Pakistan and accused the previous governments of not telling the truth to the US about the militant groups operating in the country. It is a glaring admission by the Pakistani leadership, Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Raveesh Kumar said at a media briefing. He added that it is time for Pakistan to take credible and irreversible action against terrorists. Kumar also played down the controversy over US President Donald Trump's claim that Prime Minister Narendra Modi asked him to mediate on the Kashmir issue, saying it is now time to move on. On this edition of India's World, we will analyze Imran Khan's admissions in the United States. Joining me on the program today are Arvind Gupta, Director, Vivekananda International Foundation; Dilip Sinha, former Ambassador; and Rana Banerjee, former Special Secretary, Cabinet Secretariat. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of India's World. Mr. Gupta, I'd like to begin the program with you. What do you make of Imran Khan's admissions in the United States, where he said that 30 to 40,000 terrorists are operating from his soil?
First, what he said is an open secret. Everybody knows it. The Americans know it. The international community knows it. Now, surely he has admitted it, but as your report said, that he wanted to put the blame on the predecessors. So it has something to do with their internal politics. But the fact remains that Pakistan is the epicenter of terrorism, and 30 to 40,000 still remain on this soil. That is something that is worth noting. And I think international community's task is still not done. Despite the fact that there is now some movement on Afghanistan and they want Pakistan's help to resolve this issue. But the fact remains that terrorism is a very big problem and the international community should note it. So I think our spokesperson said it and noted it very well, that the work is still not done and we must continue to exert pressure on them.
Ambassador, what do you think prompted a sitting Prime Minister, like Mr. Gupta just pointed out? It's an open secret. We all know that this has been happening. But what has prompted a sitting Prime Minister to actually come out and speak about it in the open?
Well, I feel that there are possibly two reasons for it. One is that he wanted to score some brownie points against his opposition, Nawaz Sharif and the PPP. Put the blame on them for breeding these terrorists. And the other is the dilemma that Imran Khan has right now. He has to please the Americans. So he has to show to the Americans that he's taking some action against terrorists. So first he has to say that there's a lot of terrorists floating around the country and I am taking serious action against them. So that would endear him to the Americans. So these two factors I think are responsible for this. And this has happened in Pakistan earlier also. There have been earlier leaders in Pakistan who have blamed their terrorism on the previous regime. Been going on since October 1947, when they said there were tribals coming into Kashmir, and then 6 months later they said, they're our troops, fine, they're our troops. In Kargil is the same story, they said they're not our people. And then later on turned out and they said, okay, they are our troops, so what? So that is Pakistan for us.
Right, all right. Mr. Banerjee, do you see Imran Khan running into any kind of trouble, for his statements with the Pakistani army and the ISI?
No, not as yet. Firstly, because the composition of his delegation itself would indicate that both the army chief and the ISI chief were members of the official delegation, which has been somewhat unusual. And I would look at the statement more in terms of an effort by Imran Khan to show that his particular government was on the same page with the army, and that this time it was a mission to seek America's trust more than the previous regimes, the allegations that have been made by Mr. Trump's government itself about Pakistan's deceit and untrustworthiness. To dispel that impression, I think in a spirit of disarming this particular feeling in America, Imran took this posture. And I would presume that this would have had some sort of a clearance from both Bajwa and the DGISI, who's a new appointee. Though it's a fact that there has been some criticism in the media, in hardline circles of the Pakistani media, and those close to the Pakistan Muslim League, Nawaz, which is under siege at the moment. Some retired generals of Pakistan, who are members of the PMLN, have been critical of this admission. But I don't foresee this, building into an embarrassment for Imran just at present.
Right. So that having been said, Mr. Gupta, are the army and the ISI, of course, and the civilian government on the same page in Pakistan?
Yes, I think this visit showed that they are so far on the same page. And while Imran was having his meetings, Bajwa and others were having their meetings. And I think they were trying to convince the American senators and others about how important they are for Afghanistan, and they would be cooperating on Afghanistan and perhaps also trying to extract the price. So far it is very clear that this kind of a visit would not have taken place, and this kind of admissions would not have happened unless the two were on the same page. But in future, what happens, who knows?
Okay. So at some level, is the economy or the economic situation in Pakistan playing on the minds of both Imran Khan as well as the army in Pakistan, Ambassador?
Yes, absolutely. See, Pakistan is in desperate need of money, and they are also under pressure from the FATF. Now, they need to get out of that grey zone in which they are and also avoid the risk of getting blacklisted in October. So they have to keep America happy. That is one. And the other is they also want to see an opportunity in Afghanistan today, with Trump being keen to get out of Afghanistan. They see a toehold for them. So they want to keep America happy so that America allows the Taliban to come into power in Afghanistan. And even if the Taliban come in as a sneak in through the back door or whatever in the government, that will be enough for them, and Pakistan will be quite happy. So I think both these factors, the financial factor and the Taliban opportunity, are playing on the minds of Imran Khan and the army, and they want to please Trump and keep him happy.
Since we are here, Mr. Banerjee, since we're talking about Afghanistan, I'd like your thoughts on that. So where does the entire Afghan situation now leave India? Because, Trump has categorically stated that he wants to pull out by September 1st. In all likelihood, that's not going to happen. But they are relying heavily on Pakistan to sort out the mess in Afghanistan. How is all of this going to play out for India?
Quite correct. It will leave India struggling to find influence in the evolving political scenario that emerges. Of course, India should not panic because of this evolving situation, because there will still be many a slip between the cup and the lip. The Taliban have been escalating their demands. They are following the age-old principle of talk, fight. And again, from the American side, though Khalilzad has a lot of pressure from his Republican mentors to deliver before November next year, he is still sticking to the format of everything is on the table and then nothing is agreed till everything is agreed. So if you look at that, then they would want Pakistani pressure to get the Talibans to talk to the Afghans who are now in the Ghani government. Now, there is an initiative recently which has been taken side by side with the bilateral talks in Doha by the German Special Envoy on Afghanistan, Markus Potzel, who has got Afghans in individual capacity, some belonging to the Ghani government, to sit at the same table as the Taliban. Where this process goes remains to be seen. And the Taliban's demands are still far from being accepted by the whole of Afghan society. Those pertaining to the implementation of Sharia, the acceptance and the changes that have to be made in the constitution, their ambivalence on women's rights, how much they will accept, schools for children, women, girl child, all these things, there is a lot of ambivalence in the Taliban's approach, and there are different resolutions in Dari and in Pashto which give different interpretations of what has been agreed upon. So it is all in a very nebulous stage. One other point I'd like to make about the previous question that you mentioned about the relationship between Imran and the army. You see, this is timing of it is interesting because Bajwa's tenure is coming to an end in November, and this is going to be late or mid-August even. So Bajwa would want an extension to be able to completely get on top of this process of, mainstreaming the militants inside Pakistan. And the grapevine is that he has asked for an extension, and as per the constitution, it is up to Imran, despite being the army's creation, to actually concur to that extension. Now, this has to be seen along with the history of, extensions by military generals. It's not liked by peer group of generals or retired generals who don't want a chief to continue. So, how this plays out would probably give some leverage to Imran in how he handles the military's pressure on him.
That having been said, just taking off from where Mr. Banerjee left, does Imran Khan have any leverage as far as the army is concerned? Would he like to go down that road at some point and try and gain complete control?
I think to gain complete control of the army, this is a far-fetched thing. He is very much a creature of the army. But as Mr. Banerjee said, when extensions time comes, and they tend to have some kind of leverage. But I have a feeling that the way their relationship has evolved and the way this visit has gone and where they have worked together, quite possible that that thing might be sorted out and he might get extension, because one argument could be that the Afghan situation is still fluid and there are a lot of things are still to happen, and the person who is dealing with it, that is Bajwa, should continue. So those kind of arguments could also play out. As regards the generals and who would be happy or who would not be happy, that is an internal issue, and that could probably be sorted out, or at least that could go dormant for some time. But I have a feeling that Imran and Bajwa probably have worked out something.
And talking about Afghanistan, Mr. Gupta, what are India's options really as far as Afghanistan is concerned?
Look, we are not in the deal. The kind of deal that is happening, India cannot really play a much role in this one. And I do not know whether even the elements of the deal, whether they really suit us. But this is, as he said, we need not be in a panic. I think the Afghan situation is going to evolve. Firstly, I have a very big apprehension whether the deal will work out at all. The deal may happen and it may start unraveling as soon as it happens. Because the Taliban, they are not going to make any compromises except for tactically on their core concerns. So in a few months, the deal may start unraveling. Then a new situation will arise, and then of course every country would have to think of its. Also, let us assume that Afghanistan, some deal happens and some stability returns. I think the role of India is very much there. India has already put in a lot of money there. India has a very good track record in Afghanistan. People are very much for India. And then all the countries, including Russia, Central Asia, and even Americans perhaps, will again start looking towards India to see whether it can contribute to the stability, reconstruction, etc. in Afghanistan. So I think there will be many other opportunities coming India's way. So at the moment, we have to really watch the situation and see how it develops. India is not out of the game, because deal probably will happen, but let's see whether the situation in Afghanistan, how it develops. My own feeling is that we are in for very difficult times in Afghanistan. So maybe it is better to be out at this particular moment than really be in, because you really cannot influence very much as far as the deal making goes.
So taking this point forward, Ambassador, talking about opportunities and eventual opportunities at some point in time in Afghanistan, Taliban has said that it is willing to talk to Pakistan. This is something that came out just a couple of days ago, saying that they are open to talks with Pakistan. So in the eventuality, Taliban does, if the US pulls out and Taliban takes control of Afghanistan fully, can India work with Taliban considering our past at some point?
I don't think so. I think it will be impossible for India to have any kind of deal with Taliban, at least in the beginning. Later on, perhaps one doesn't know. But our values don't match, and the Taliban, when they come into Afghanistan, they'll be very, very brutal. Let's be clear in our minds, what happened to Afghanistan in the 1990s is not forgotten. The way the Taliban moved in and destroyed everything that Afghanistan stood for and was. And it's taken a long time for the world to rebuild Afghanistan. So we'll have to be clear that we cannot possibly deal with a government that is so anti anything that we stand for. Not only a question of secularism, pluralism, but basic things like women's rights, education for girls, any kind of civilization that human beings stand for. Taliban, that was a government that was recognized only by 3 countries, and there was only one resident ambassador there, that was the Pakistani ambassador. And in any case, the way things are, we'll have to move out very quickly, because Taliban will not allow, Pakistan's ISI also will not allow our people to be there in Afghanistan. That is the point that Imran Khan made in his speech in the Institute of Peace in Washington, that the trouble in Afghanistan comes from India, and that's one of the points that he made very strongly. And even though he admitted that Pakistan looks to Afghanistan as a strategic depth, so both the ISI and the Taliban will remove every trace of India from there first. Now, what options we have, that's a different story, and we can look at that, but our position will be very difficult.
But what about the tremendous goodwill that India has in Afghanistan? Over the years, we've helped Afghanistan, we've helped the people of Afghanistan, the cricket team, the hospitals, and so on and so forth. Can that be leveraged at some point?
Absolutely. I mean, but the point is that can be leveraged only in a peaceful condition if we insist that anybody who comes to power has to come to power in Afghanistan through an election, an internationally supervised election, and that Taliban cannot win. There's no chance of their winning an election. Even in Pakistan, the fundamentalist parties do not get much percentage of votes. In Afghanistan, they will not. So our strength are the civilians, the people, the modern generation in Afghanistan. They are our strength, but they cannot fight the Taliban. Even today, when the American forces are there, present there, the Taliban are going around blowing up the whole place. Once the American forces withdraw, then there's no question of anybody being able to meet the Taliban's destructive power. Taliban backed by Pakistan. Let's be very clear. It's with the ISI moving in with Taliban together. I don't accept this distinction between Taliban, Taliban Pakistan, Taliban Afghanistan, and the ISI. It's all the same controlled organization.
Sure. So moving on from Afghanistan now and sticking specifically to India and Pakistan, another controversial issue during Imran Khan's visit to the United States was the statement made by US President Trump, where he said that, India has asked him to mediate really as far as the Kashmir issue is concerned. India categorically denied that. Is that a closed chapter now, Mr. Banerjee?
Well, we have to look at it in 2 senses. One, that it might have been a gaffe by Trump, or possibly even a deliberate lie to please his, immediate interlocutor, to please Pakistan. Either which way, our position remains the same, that we are only prepared to deal with this issue bilaterally with Pakistan. And I don't think that is affected. But that said, it is more important for us to look at the prevailing internal situation in our part of Kashmir and control it in a better way, and reach out in political terms to whatever developments are taking place there. And there are some possible hopeful signs on that front. The infiltration is down, the recruitment of new recruits locally in the badly affected areas of South Kashmir is also down. So now if there is a worthwhile political outreach by the new government, the things could improve on that front. And if that happens, then we would be in a better position to face up to whatever international pressures for mediation that mount. So I think that is where we stand.
Mr. Gupta, the Indo-US relationship has come a long way, and ties are in a good place at this point in time. But the statement made by US President Trump, is that in any way going to affect Indo-US ties?
I think it's time to move on. I mean, this statement has been there, a lot of analysis has been there, but Kashmir is not the real issue here, because as if you look at the interview or Trump's statement, he also said, okay, I want to mediate, but let me also check with Mr. Modi whether he's on the same page. They know it very well that India would not agree. So if India doesn't agree, the statement doesn't really mean anything. And we have already very clearly said that India cannot accept any mediation. I think we have to move on. But we have to now be careful about a couple of things. One is that Imran Khan's visit to the US has allowed Pakistan to come out of a tremendous international pressure that it was under. And this started about a year ago, and a lot of it is because of the way India played its diplomacy, etc. and we were quite complacent, in fact, that there is this kind of pressure. But I think this meeting with Trump and Imran praising each other, and in fact, Trump probably has praise only from Imran Khan and nobody else. So he's the only world leader, Imran Khan, who has praised Trump, and he's very pleased about it. So whether this opens up a space for a reset of Pakistan-US relations, at least initially it seems that it could open up some possibilities of US-Pak engagements, and they have talked about trade and they have talked about many other things. Of course, the structural dynamics remains, and that the Afghanistan is very important. So until Afghanistan remains in the kind of a situation that it is, that Americans are still there and Americans depending on Pakistan, US-Pakistan relationship may be, at least for some time to come, it may begin to improve. So what impact it has on India-Pakistan relations, that is we have to see, or rather India-US relations. So I think we have to see that we have to really make sure that our relationship with the US is not damaged. So that's why I think this playing up on this Kashmir statement, etc., we should stop it, and instead we should concentrate on Indo-US engagement. And I would even say that perhaps at the diplomatic level, we should now step up our engagement with the US, because there are so many other factors other than Pakistan which define Indo-US relationship today. Trade is very important. That's where Trump probably is unhappy. So I think we have to resolve some of these issues. So all these channels of communication, engagement that we have, we should really now open up, and this will itself put some pressure on the US-Pak relationship.
Sure.
So this is, I think, the way we should handle.
Absolutely. See, another statement made by Imran Khan, Ambassador, was the fact that he's talking about more trade between India and Pakistan, and he's called for peace as well. What do you make of that? Because he doesn't want to concentrate on terrorism. India has categorically stated that first talk terror, sort out the terror issue, and then we can look at anything else.
Well, this is typical deception by Pakistan. He wanted to look very reasonable to that audience and the Institute of Peace. The fact remains, I did not mention that Pakistan has not ever given MFN treatment to India. That's the first point of starting any trade between the two countries. So how can you have trade if you have MFN, if you don't give us MFN? And the other is that recently, when they were exporting salt from Pakistan to India, they discovered heroin inside the trucks. Now they have to take action against that. We can't possibly allow heroin to come to India in the name of salt. So these things have to be taken care of, quite apart from terrorism, which is a separate issue altogether,
yeah.
and a very serious issue. But trade itself can progress only if you have some of the basic elements of trade between two civilized countries, which he did not mention. We have all been for trade, but and we had continued to give MFN to Pakistan all these years. It was only withdrawn recently after Pulwama. So we have to, Pakistan has to understand that it can fool a few people in America and around the world, but when it comes to brass tacks of trade negotiations, they have to be open to trade.
Okay. So, Mr. Banerjee, with the FATF sword hanging, as far as Pakistan is concerned, do you believe that Pakistan is going to act and take some kind of action against terror on its soil?
Well, they are taking, but their main aim is to avoid getting into the blacklist, and they are sufficiently inured in that regard already because of the presence of China, Malaysia and Turkey in the committee. So there is no way in which they could be pushed into the blacklist, but even staying in the grey list creates some complications about getting free access to funds from Western donor agencies. So they are trying to do things. They have set up a special cell in their finance ministry which will exclusively look at the concerns of the FATF. How far they get bailed out, how sincere these efforts are seen on the ground is difficult at this stage to assess. But it's a little more than cosmetic this time, perhaps.
Okay. So, closing comments now from all my guests, taking off from where Mr. Banerjee left off. Mr. Gupta, can we trust Pakistan to deal with terror?
I think we have dealt with them for 70 years. So we should have that 70 years of experience behind us. I don't think they are trustworthy.
Okay. Can Imran Khan be given the benefit of the doubt, Ambassador, or do you still deal with Pakistan skeptically?
I don't think so. I don't think he's been in power for 1 year now, and we have not seen any indication from him that he intends to change things. Not that he can change things, but even if he wanted to, his background, his own association with the Taliban, and his association with the army makes it much too difficult for him to step out and make any kind of change.
And Mr. Banerjee, close the show for us with your concluding remarks on the best way forward.
I would go entirely with my distinguished panelists. We cannot trust Pakistan. But nevertheless, I think we are moving towards a time where we can think of engagement without, going the full hog about dialogue. Engagement in a calibrated manner, responding to genuine attempts by Pakistan to deal with some of our abiding concerns.
Okay, all right. On that note, then we'll call it a wrap on this edition of India's World. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. We'd like to hear from you as well. Do share your feedback with us. Our email ID is indiasworld.feedback@gmail.com. You can also tweet to us using our Twitter handles at FRP09 and at Rajya Sabha TV. That's it from me. See you again next time.